Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Scenic City Sports Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things sports and entertainment here in the Chattanooga, North Georgia area. Brought to you by the following fine sponsors. Our title sponsor, Gary Thacker Insurance at 2382 Battlefield Parkway in Fort Oglethorpe. You can reach them at 706-866-8283 for all your insurance needs. Make sure you let them know that the guys from SCS sent you. Also, Choo Choo Barbecue of Chickamauga, 12960 Highway 27. You can reach them at 706-375-7675. Dine in or carry out some of the finest barbecue you will ever put in your mouth. And as our own Ringgold Rob likes to say, you don't know Q until you know Choo Choo. The Chattanooga Flower Market over on 8016 East Brainerd Road. Jamie Jones and his family run an awesome flower shop over that way. Guys, if you get yourself in the doghouse, call the Chattanooga Flower Market at 423-899-2440, and they will help you get your way back out. And the Payne Mortgage Team, our good friend Greg Payne and all his fine folks over at 6148 Lee Highway. You can reach them at 423-645-9404 for all of your mortgage needs. And finally, a special thank you to Matthew Mays and Jupiter Coyote. These folks are fine enough to let us use their music for the podcast. If you're interested in hearing more from them, you can reach them at jupitercoyote.com. Stay tuned, and the boys will get to talking here in just 1 minute. And welcome, everybody, to this Wednesday edition of the Scenic City Sports Podcast, episode 34, if you're keeping track at home. Rusty, Scott, and Rob in Studio X, being joined by a special guest tonight that we will get to here in just a second. Just want to say thank you to all the folks out there welcoming us and supporting us each week. Talked about all the sponsors during the opening. And as soon as this fine tune that we were listening to, as soon as I crank her down just a shade, we'll get right to talking. But tonight, joining us on camera, or actually this afternoon, joining us on camera is Tyner head coach, Christian Mainor. Coach, welcome to Scenic City Sports.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here.
I went by there the other day. None of us had your phone number, and we thought about bringing you on. We just brought on Austin Chris, first-year head coach down at Ringo the week before. Hadn't been in some of those hallways in a long, long time. As Coach here knows, I educated him a few years ago. I am a graduate. Well, I got a certificate somewhere. I said 1982. But I was a ball player, so they might have shed a little light on saying, get out.
Yeah. Is that when they were still the Hilltoppers?
No, the band was. The band was called the Hilltoppers in that day, but not. I saw this on Facebook the other day. Somebody was asking the question when they went from Hilltoppers to Rams, and I think it was somewhere in the early 70s they made that name change.
I didn't realize that there's a different mascot that used to be for the Tyner. Well, what I know the Tyner Rams. I didn't realize they were called the Hilltoppers.
Hilltoppers. And if you turn around when you got your back to their buddy and you look up on the hill, that was the reason.
Okay.
The Hilltoppers.
There's a few schools around here that have changed nicknames over the years.
Well, Lafayette was the Mountain Bears?
They were the Mountain Bears back in the 30s,
Yeah.
But Bob Evans was of course alive back in that day. I saw him on.
I bet it wasn't Bob Evans Field then, was it?
No, it wasn't Bob Evans. It was Bob Evans Stadium.
It was the field.
Field wasn't named after anybody back then. Of course, Wayne Turner, which field was named after for several years. Wayne's younger brother played ball with me. Okay. We were on the same teams for several years. Wayne was a little bit older, so he wasn't around at that time. He had a second brother that name excuses me, but he went on and got a track scholarship in throwing discus and shots for Texas A&M.
Oh wow!
Dang.
Okay.
Pretty big deal back in that day.
That's a real big deal.
And he also was a pretty good Ronald Turner was his name. Football player as well. Let's take you back a minute. What got you from that Panhandle, which I said I don't know if I'd ever left there if I grew up there, to Scenic City?
I don't know. It just kind of all happened at the time. I've got 3 kids, married. We just were looking for a change, and so at the time I had 2 kids. We had one later here in Chattanooga, but just looking for a change of pace. I knew I wanted to coach football, knew I wanted to teach, and so I knew a lot of folks down there in the Panhandle. I grew up in a really small town. People think when they hear I'm from Florida, they think I ride a surfboard every day. I grew up with peanut fields and
I think you were telling me 15,
fence.
20 minutes north of Destin.
North of Destin, about 30 minutes north of Destin. Little one red light town. Grew up K through 12 school, so I've been to one high school, elementary, middle school.
One set of building your whole time.
Yep. So the problem is when you get a name on yourself, especially if it's not a great name. Everybody from kindergarten up knows who you are, and so you can't escape anyone. But grew up in a real small town. We want to change scenery. To us, I live in Ooltewah. Ooltewah is a massive place compared to where I grew up.
I could take you back 4 decades, and you wouldn't think
that's
that.
What I've heard. That's what I've
now
heard.
It is.
That's what I've heard. So, and then I actually I worked on the road for my dad's company while I was waiting to look for a job, and so Ooltewah opened up. Interviewed there, and then shortly after I got the job, Scott Chandler was hired. And so
now you came in. Who had the job for a second time?
Shannon. Well, I came in. So Mac Bryan was before Scott.
Okay.
So I think it went Shannon, Mac, and then it went Scott.
Well, it went Shannon again
for like a week.
Not long.
And I was actually part of that coaching staff for about a month, and then Scott ended up getting the job at Tyner. So I coached it. I was at Ooltewah for 3 years. I actually taught there 4. My first year at Tyner, I still taught at Ooltewah. Was the offense coordinator my last year there, and so when Scott got the job over at Tyner, it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
He said, "Come on."
He did, and it's been, it's been a blessing. It was a blessing to be at Ooltewah. I love the place. I love the people.
Yep.
Good people. Still where it's where my home is. But Tyner was obviously a special place because the kids are unique. It's a unique situation because it's a magnet school, so we don't have just kids that are zoned for Tyner. We've got kids that are all over the city.
Very small.
It is.
Where at one time it was very large.
Yeah, and so it's funny. A lot of the kids that I coached at Ooltewah, their parents are Tyner grads.
Believe that.
And so it's a very special place. You get kids from all over the city. But what's funny is you think Chattanooga. I mean, to me it's a massive city. I know some folks it's not. You live in New York, you live in Chicago, DC. It's a small town, but to me it's big. But all these kids know each other. As big as it is, they know each other through Pop Warner, know each other through elementary school. They bounce back and forth to different elementary schools based off their living situations. So it's a neat place to be where it's spread out, but to me, it's the closest thing you get to a community in Chattanooga.
I think people sitting here, particularly Scott, who covers North Georgia, and all the kids know each other from school to school because they actually grew up somehow, some way, either being on those same teams or playing against each other in those same teams.
Ball, travel balls.
Yep.
So you're seeing that in Chattanooga area, and that doesn't surprise anybody as well. Again, you didn't get to be around Tyner as long as myself, and saw that thing for. I'm 60, so I'm familiar with it for nearly 50 years at least, and the only thing that was ever different in my day and then was when I stood on that field and I looked across there. The terrain was the same except for that big temple that we could see down the street from the church, and that had been there for 15, 20 years. That wasn't back in the day. Everything else was the same.
Okay.
Believe it or not,
no change.
The small press box, the small bathrooms. There was another concession stand that was across on the other side that got tore down many years ago, but not a whole lot changed. You and Coach Chandler took over a program that Wayne Turner had been at for a long time, and some folks at this table, including myself, thought this is going to be interesting whether anybody will hold that together, because I know what he had done through those years to hold that together, and miraculously Y'all did fine. And it ends last year in the state championship.
First time in 25 years.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the state championship.
Okay. Anybody wants to talk about that, I'd be glad to talk about it.
We'll get past it in a minute. But, I got the privilege of watching y'all a little bit the year before and a fair amount of times last week. That opening quarter didn't start like anything I had seen. And I don't know, I didn't see panic on y'all's faces, but I think at the same time you were thinking, this isn't going as planned. Go back to that first quarter.
So honestly, first off, I didn't know Riverside. I didn't know where they were from. Didn't know where Decatur County. I'm not from Tennessee, so once you get past Nashville, I have no idea where anything is. So watching them on film, they were hard to gauge because there were games where they looked like up front they were going to be really tough to block. But with Tyner, we have skill on the perimeter. So I think going into it, we thought that we were going to be able to make it a perimeter game and be able to throw the ball and use our athleticism against them. And you get in those first two drives, Josh Jackson, who's Mr. Football, a winner for 2A. Those two interceptions, the score's 15-0 before you even have a chance to blink. And so, honestly, if you told me if you drew it up that way, I wouldn't have believed you because I really thought we had a good chance going into it. But I'll be honest, what I think what is the difference for us and why we didn't panic is because if you go back 5-6 weeks before, we went up to Alcoa, and the year before they thumped us from the start of the first kickoff to the end. And so when we went up to Alcoa, the mighty Alcoa, 8 straight state championships now, great program.
With twice as that many on their resume.
Yep. So when we went up there, we're going in the locker room down 7-0 against Alcoa, and we've been inside the 5-yard line twice and didn't score. We come out, we score, we're down 7-6. They turn the ball over to us, and the majority of the third quarter, really about probably with 6-7 minutes left, we're winning that ball. We're in that ball game. We're a one possession game. And I think we found a belief, even though the score, I think we ended up getting beat 42-21 or 42-20, something like that. I think when we knew that we could go and compete with Alcoa, we knew we could compete against anybody.
Sure.
And so even when we were down 15-0, I think that game, as much as I hate seeing Alcoa on the schedule, I think we're going to get rid of them, and all of a sudden we bump up to 3A. So any road to the state championship is going to go through Alcoa. We hung our hat on that. And even though I don't like losing, I want to win everything. I left. Obviously being inside the 5-yard line twice. If you score those, maybe it's a different. I don't know, but you're able to hang your hat on. Hey, we just went and competed with one of the top 2 or 3 best teams in the entire state.
Prior to you getting here, and these guys here can echo this, the Maryvilles and the Alcoas in the world had spoiled many of really, really good teams out of Chattanooga that they thought they had a shot at the gold ball, but they had to get past that.
Yeah.
Well, Scott and I went up there.
Second round, third round.
Scott and I went up there one year, and Tyner was head and shoulders better on the field. They were the better of the two teams. But Alcoa had a quarterback you might have heard of named Randall Cobb that went on and played at Kentucky and for the Packers.
Well, Tyner turned it over 4 times.
Yeah, and Tyner had 4 turnovers on the night. But there were a lot of and then Red Bank all those years with Maryville. Goodness, man.
Red Bank has
you get around that area up there. That's football hotbed.
Yep.
All the way up, even through 5A and 6A, it's still.
Well, in the semifinals down at Finley, I'm not sure how many years back now, Notre Dame and them met, and Notre Dame turned it over 5 times that night. Uncharacteristically, you cannot make mistakes with teams like that.
And that's why they're so good, because it's funny. The first 3 years I was here in Tennessee, Maryville was in Oodawall's region, or in their region, and I'm like, finally, thank Lord, I'm going somewhere I can get away from Maryville. And then you look on the schedule, we got Alcoa 2 years.
It's that same sister.
You got Maryville Light.
Yeah, so we're never going to get rid of them, it seems like. But, it's fun because it pushes you and strives you to get to where you want to be. And I think, obviously parody's fun. You see college football. I think that's why college football is so great. Alabama and Georgia have decided to make parody less in college football. It seems like the last few years. But parody is fun, and especially when you get in high school sports and when the other teams have chances to compete and win for state championships. To me, that's what high school sports is all about.
Obviously, this team you've got, it's a brand new team. Any coach will tell you that. It didn't matter what we did last year. But you are coming off a state championship. So, obviously, you still got a few pieces left over from that team. What lessons can you take from last year's experiences that you can kind of lean back towards this year?
Well, it's funny because I hate to bring up Maryville again, but I talked to their head coach a couple times before, and I asked him, what are your keys to success? And really, as of late, they haven't. I don't think they've won a couple.
No, they've run into Oakland.
They have, but they were going to state championships
many times.
So if you think about it, that's 15 games a year. So that's extra 5 weeks of practice that you get. That's an extra, once if you got a kid that's a junior, he's already gone through 3 seasons basically.
That's right.
That's
and they grow
games.
up sooner too.
They do.
Doing that.
They do. So I think I look back at our guys, although we're replacing pretty much not even pretty much replacing.
You lost 20 seniors.
Yeah, we were replacing every skill position.
Yeah.
Replacing every skill position. We've got 3 O linemen coming back. We've got a couple D linemen coming back. So in the trenches, I think we feel good about where we're at. Obviously quarterback, running back, receivers, DBs. I think we're going to end up starting 2 sophomores and safety. We're going to go through some growing pains. But I think the thing that we got to remind ourselves of is winning is contagious. And so for us, I hope, and I think I've seen it, and the coaches have talked about it, we've seen it, we want to compete. And so I think the guys saw what it took to win. They saw what it took for us to get over the humps that we got through last year. And so I'm hoping at that point, that contagious, the winning aspect of it just kind of takes over and it's natural for us.
You've been under Coach Chandler now for 5 years, and now it's your turn to be in his place. What did he teach you?
A lot. He taught me a lot. I definitely think it was a God thing for me to end up under Coach Chandler's wing because, my goal has been to coach high school football. It's been to become a coordinator, become a head coach. And honestly, I don't think I would be as prepared if I was under anybody other than Coach Chandler. The first thing he taught is you got to love on the kids, and you got to do it in ways that, sometimes discipline. Sometimes you got to be very authoritative. You got to show the authority, but you also can do it out of love. You can do it out of service. He was big on acts of service. So I think one thing, you mentioned, Coach Turner was there for 30 years, which, I've gotten to know Coach Turner a little bit through wrestling. And I think it's easy to see why all the guys love Coach Turner. Just in 5 minutes of conversation, there's not very many Wayne Turners walking on this earth.
No, there's not.
And you could tell easily why the guys before loved Coach Turner.
And one of the things that you would always notice in Coach Turner, and this took place, you weren't there, but how many kids that would come back and stand on those sidelines. Now, they might have been gone a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 or 4, but they would come back because that Ram train and with Coach Turner, it really did become a family. Trust me on that. I mean, he did so much up there, and I used to challenge him a little bit. I say, Coach, delegate a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a big deal up here, but people would ask me from time to time, when's he leaving? When is he leaving? I said, Coach does not have a whole lot of hobbies. And coaching high school football and taking care of these facilities the best he can, that's what he does.
Yeah.
That's what he does. And so it was a job for him, but it was a hobby for him in many respects. Your staff changed Heard a few of your kids the other day. We talked. It changed quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about your staff.
Okay, so
What's different?
we lost everybody on the defense side. Coach Chandler was, last year it was his defense that, I think we had 8 shutouts or something like that. 7 shutouts.
That's why when you fell down 15-0, I thought, well, that ain't normal.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not, because there wasn't many games where teams combined to score 15. But we did have a lot of turnover. Coach Mainor, who was the co-defense coordinator, he went to Cleveland. Coach
New staff up there.
Yep. Coach K-Wise, we called him, Kelvin Young. He ended up moving to Clarksville. He was our linebackers coach. He was also the co-defense coordinator. And then Coach Chandler, especially on the defensive side. Losing him was big as well, because his knowledge, his way he coached, the demand he had on the defense, that's something you miss. But we got some good guys, I think, in place. We got Coach Kerry Jackson, who was at Ooltewah for a few years, really 8 or 10 years, I think is what he said. He was at Beach for a little bit, Red Bank for a little bit. He's going to be our defense coordinator.
Probably know him, but don't know his name. I'll probably recognize his name.
He's been at Ooltewah for a little bit. I think it's the longest stretch he's had anywhere. And then we've got Dame Suttles. They call him D. He's going to be coaching linebackers for us. He actually was over at the middle school, has a great connection, great relationship with the kids. So he's that guy that kind of replaced KY. And he was a big relationship guy. And so I think that's one thing, when you got private schools that are lurking everywhere, relationships.
And that's been another thing that's been Tyner's success. They've always been pretty good at when
keeping
I say
kids at home.
Well, yeah, a middle school has had success, and it's come across the street.
Yep.
And I know some other schools that some private schools saw those middle school kids, and that's where they ended up.
Yep.
But Tyner's done a pretty good job through the years.
And that's what when I got the job, I said, if we can keep a border around the middle school, we're going to compete year in and year out, because the middle school does a great job. Coach Cook, that's in the middle school, he's done a great job. He's been there for, I think, 15 plus years, and he really wants the kids to stay home too. I think that's a big help. But we have Coach Fortson. Kevin Fortson's coaching our D-line. He played at Red Bank, went and played.
I thought that name sounded familiar.
I remember that.
He went and played some JUCO ball in Oklahoma. I think he ended up at Arizona State for a short time. He had a knee injury that kind of ended things for him, but he's done a great job, been developing relationship and teaching our guys how that we want to play and be physical up front. And then we actually got really lucky. We got Kareem Orr, who played at Notre Dame.
Well, Kareem was on that.
I recognize that name.
Well, Kareem was on that Notre Dame team that fell short to Alcoa.
Okay.
And Coach, you could honestly argue that night Notre Dame skill-wise was better than Alcoa.
Yeah.
Up front, they were 5 men up front.
Yep.
And they made life difficult on the interior line.
Yep, and that's what they did to us. But he's coaching our DBs, does a great job, and obviously he knows how to play the position. Did it at a high level, so he's been a huge asset for us.
Yeah.
I thought last I heard, I thought Kareem was over there helping Notre Dame.
He was, and then I think kind of like me, I think I had a position to go back to my home school that I played at, but I kind of wanted to spread my wings elsewhere, and try to develop relationships elsewhere.
Congratulations on that.
Yes, sir.
Little time in the pros too.
Yep. He's got a Super Bowl.
He got a Super Bowl ring.
He does.
We'll have to get a picture of that when we're out there.
Got a new region.
And then on the offensive side, coordinator, coach, we got Les Boyum, who I've been with all 5 years. We were together at Ooltewah. You talk about a guy that knows the game in and out. He's the guy that I rely on the most when it comes, especially up front.
He's an X&O guy. Huh?
He's an X&O guy. He's been everywhere. He coached for Luke Holtz at Minnesota. He was a quality control guy at Arkansas, so he's got a lot of experience. I think Houston Nutt was the head coach there at that point. So he's got a lot of experience, and then we've got 2 community guys. A guy named we call him Coach Mel. He's coaching our running backs, and then a guy named AJ Jackson who's coaching our receivers.
And you said young receivers, young backs, I guess.
Yes. Well, we got a couple for senior backs that because of Tyner's always had a staple of backs.
They've always had that,
and I think we're going to continue to have that. Fortunately, so we're going to be very run heavy, and so we're going to use those guys. And we've got what we like to call thunder and lightning. We've got a guy that's about 5'10", 220. That's going to be our thunder, and then we've got a couple other guys that I think can be our lightning.
Well, one of the trade's secrets and characteristics of Tyner through the years is there's lots of things, but I think one of the easiest ones to point out, Scott, is they've been team-wise fast.
Oh yeah,
that's been one of the kind of the characteristics of many a Tyner teams, and you were last year.
Mm-hmm.
Scott,
got new region. Obviously, you guys are moving up Class 3A, Brainerd, Chattanooga Central, McMinn Central, Meigs County, and Sweetwater. What do you know about the teams that you'll be facing? Obviously, you guys have played Brainerd in the past.
Brainerd's familiar. We're very familiar with Brainerd. Brainerd's got a lot of talent. They got Martell Carter. They've got a couple other guys over there that I think have offers from different programs around the country. So we know that they're going to have athletes. The thing that I think we've been more successful at the last couple of years is we're very physical up front. And so I think if we can continue to play with our physicality.
That's been another characteristic of Tyner for many years.
Yeah. If we continue to be physical, I think we'll have a really good chance of winning our region. So Brainerd, obviously a rivalry, really good athletes. So that one will be definitely an interesting one. Central, never played Central. Even when I was at Ooltewah, we didn't play each other. So I know Coach Jones. I got to know him a little bit.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, but go look at the all-time record of Tyner and Central.
What is it?
It's heavy, Tyner.
Okay.
Heavy.
Well, hopefully that continues.
They haven't played in a while, though.
We covered them about maybe the last year of Coach T, or for that over at Central. Tyner wins that ball game, but they hadn't always meet because actually go back in time. There was a city and a county league in Hamilton County.
Okay.
And Central was county.
Okay.
So Tyner didn't have them as often on the schedule.
Okay.
But when Tyner's zone was huge, it went to seam distance of Central High School on Highway 58. All of East Brainerd for the most part, down Lee Highway, and like I said, Ooltewah didn't have 2 traffic lights in those days.
Yeah.
So things have changed.
Yeah.
But now, not to put you on, make you pressure, but Central hadn't beat Tyner very often.
Okay. Well, hopefully that trend continues. I know Coach Jones does a good job over there.
He does.
And they've got athletes, and they kind of. I'm sure they're similar to us, where they've got some guys on the perimeter and they've got some guys up front. But I know Coach T's over there as well. He's going to be the new coordinator.
I heard that, actually.
So I'm excited about that because, like I said, I've gotten to know Coach Turner, and he's one of those guys that you root for.
He's probably forgotten more football than most people are going to know in a lifetime.
He's a lovable guy.
Yeah,
he really is.
These bike pants could talk.
Well, what's funny is when we were cleaning stuff out, we found some of those, and that still had a tag on it.
Oh, I was going to say,
I promise you did.
I gave him to Coach Chandler. I said, "Well, here you go." They talk about filling someone's shoes. You got to fill the pants.
I'm sure y'all found them.
But
he probably bought them in bulk back in the day because he was afraid they were going to stop making them.
They probably did. He's probably still got them somewhere.
Still got tags on them. Case of them somewhere.
But Sweetwater, I think they lost a lot of seniors, kind of like we did. So it'd be interesting to see what they're like. McMinn Central, the coach, I think it's Coach Moody. He's done a pretty good job over there, taking them from where they were to where they are now. So
and Meigs is under new.
Yep, and Coach Bunch, I like him a lot. I've had some good conversations with him.
Did he come off the staff?
He did. He was with he was the defense coordinator for.
Okay, then I know who he is.
So
yeah,
he's a good dude. They're going to play hard. And
let me say that about Meigs. We had the privilege there up until last year. we almost lived up there watching them go through the playoffs. Me and Nathan Cook and Coach had done an amazing job with that. I mean, that's community football, because literally Friday night football, we stop, we go over there, and we support the Tigers.
Yeah.
And you know, I know he left, I know he took another position, but they've had good times and bad times, but they were on bad times before he got there. Coach Fitzgerald really took them 2 state championship games, and that town supported them. And I'm sure they haven't stopped. So I don't know if you go there or they come to you. Well, you probably go there.
We go there, yeah.
Well, you've been there before.
We have.
And you went there when they were. That's right. You know, I'll take you back in time. We were planning on covering that game, but we covered you the week before at Marion
County. We laid an egg,
and you played so poorly.
We did.
That I told Nathan, I said, well, I'm not going up there and watch that game. It won't be close. Well, then y'all must have had a hell of a good practice week and changed your mindset because you went up there and played a better team, a better ball game.
Yeah. Well, I think that year, I think we matched up better against Megs because, you know, Megs had our Marion had some athletes on the perimeter, and that was our game at that point, was, you know, getting the ball to athletes. Megs, you know, they were very physical up front but couldn't match us for our athletes. So we had some guys make some plays on the perimeter. But yeah, that you look at, you know, when we went and got beat 20-0 against Marion, and then look at the next year when we beat them 42-0.
Night and day.
And I think a big part of that was our weight room success. When we first got there, the weight room was, which I'm sure you knew where it was.
I know exactly where it was. Y'all moved it to the wrestling room, and the wrestling room to the weight room.
Yep.
I always thought they had that backwards, even in my day, but my coach wouldn't listen to me.
Well, we had 4 racks when we got there. There was some medieval contraption in the middle. That
Trust me. Do you know that was there probably 15 years before I got there?
Wow.
I told somebody, a buddy of mine who went on to play for Vanderbilt several years ago, I said, you ain't going to believe this. That old Universal machine's still sitting there intact.
Yeah,
he said, well, hell, nobody knows how to take it apart.
Well, fortunately, we found a guy that did. I think Coach Boyum took it apart. But we moved it into the wrestling room. We got 8 racks now. So we're really able to attack the weight room. And I think that, you know, we got our butts kicked because Marion County was more physical.
Sure. That was one of their, and Mainor. That was their game.
Yep.
They were going. They had some pieces here and there. They had an all-state quarterback that went on for a while. Then they got an all-state running back. But they were tough up front, and they were going to come at you.
Yep.
That's how they played.
And we didn't like it because we weren't physically ready for that. Because the only thing that to me that can get you there physically is you know, obviously those practices where you're, you know, constantly going after each other, hitting each other. But it's the weight room. You know, when
that's something that can't be ignored.
No,
you
can't
all. Pretend that's not. There's too many programs now, and when I say too many, I mean practically all of them. One, it's not a 3-month sport; it's year round, and it's almost year round for you too, Coach.
Yep.
You know, but many decades it was maybe encouraged. You should lift weights, son. You're on the football team. Okay, well, some of those people did that.
Yep.
Me, myself being one of them. I love doing that, but you can't do that. You can't make it optional.
Yeah.
It's got to be a team unity about it.
We're very fortunate. So we actually have a weight class in school. You know, I don't know if every Hamilton County school has that, but we have a weight class in school. And so Dr. Irvin, who's our principal, when she came over, it was promised to Coach Chandler before she got there, and so she kept that continuing, and I think she saw our success from it. And you know, this year we're also going to have a weight class in school as well. So I think that's huge because when we first got there, we didn't have that, and so there wasn't time. You know, we're 9 to 4, so if a kid comes lifts before school, you know, that's all good and well, but you don't have time when you get out at 4 o'clock to lift and then go and practice. I mean, you get done 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And a kid's got to be a kid at some point. He's got to do homework. Some of them have to work. So, you know, but that's been a big, huge part of our success is being able to have that weight class in school.
I know some of the North Georgia schools, Scott, have that, and they wouldn't trade that back in for nothing.
That's a huge part of
Hamilton County. You're right. I can't say that. I don't know.
Yeah. So I really don't think there's a lot of Hamilton County schools that have an emphasis on getting their football/basketball/baseball kids, whatever it is, into a class so that they can live for their specific sport.
Some more differences this year than the last two. Obviously, there is no football field.
Mm-hmm.
There is no practice field.
Yep.
I've drove by a few times and had some morning go on, and there'll be more of it. I see we all have moved down to the baseball field to practice, and then you'll be playing your games, I understand, at Finley?
So we're not. We use that for our agilities and conditioning. We're actually not going to practice there. The field we're practicing on right now is the middle school.
Okay. Many days over there?
Yeah, well, it was very apparent how crazy and how much we were going to how much we were going to have to adjust the first day we go out there for spring practice, when we walk out there and soccer's using half the field and middle school tracks running around. You got the band up at the top behind the middle school playing. So there's a lot of distractions, a lot of things as a football coach you don't overly love. But, at the end of the day, I tell my kids, you can't, the card you dealt in life, it is what it is. And how you respond to it a lot of times is going to determine the outcome. So we could let those things bother us. We could let those things bug us, but what we're going to do is try to adapt and overcome. So
walk back up the hill, through the mall, across the street to the middle school, which was originally a high school field.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Originally.
Okay. So, we
tonight on This Old School, Rob talks.
We practice over the middle school, and we're going to share the field with the middle school. So that middle school is actually about 130 yards. So middle school is going to get about 40, 50, and we're going to take about 90. So, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. And then, I think so. We're going to play at Bradley at their place both years. They're going to be generous and help us a little financially. Marion County is going to do the same thing, and then we'll play Sweetwater and Central at Finley. So we'll have
you just got two down there.
Yeah.
And Bradley and Central's going to share their field with you.
Marion.
Okay, so home game at Marion.
Home game at Marion.
But having those middle school kids on the field with you practicing like that, I mean, that's a great way to.
It is.
It allows y'all to go ahead and them get to meet you and your staff, and it also gives you a nice motivational technique for those older kids to go. You see them kids down there? They're watching y'all. Yeah. Don't be a bunch of knuckleheads. Yeah. Do what you're supposed to do, because those kids all look up to you.
Those kids will be watching.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
I use that a lot. Trust me, because I coach. I coach a sport as well. I mean, I use that with my kids. Do something. Pay attention. Yep. Be mindful of your actions, because everybody's watching.
Yep.
Okay, you just talked about that. That is nice for Bradley to offer their services, and now they got a turf up there, and they usually sometimes they play in front of 10,000 people. Okay, yep. They really do. That's better in your world than all 5 games being played down at Finley?
Well, at first, there was some things, and I don't know. I think the county tried hard to get all of our games at Finley, and I think they would have.
Okay. Probably Tim James involved in that.
Tim James did a great job of being transparent with me about what was going on. There was some times it didn't seem like there was going to be a deal get done with Finley. There were times where it did. And so at the end of the day, I just wanted to make sure I can guarantee, one, that we were going to be able to play our games on Friday nights, because Finley, you're, subject to maybe having to play on a Saturday, a Thursday.
You were opposed.
And so I didn't necessarily want to do that. And then, Bradley, they've got a turf field. Marion, they've got a really nice field, manicured field.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just seemed like that was the best thing. And then, like you said, when you go to Bradley, you're looking at 10,000 plus people. So the gate, is going to be there. It's going to be a lot better than I think if you would have played it at another place. And so I think financially it's going to help us out. And two, hey, we're going to have to play tough opponents. Hopefully we make a deep playoff run, and hopefully we can look back, like I said, on that Alcoa game. We can look back at maybe playing a Bradley, maybe playing a McMinn County, and say, hey, we can hang our hats on because we competed against a really good football team. and then use that.
Anytime state championship team.
The senior class, always important every year, but especially for a first-year head coach. So how those guys kind of maybe started to take ownership of the team a little bit?
Well, really, honestly, we have a very small senior class. So my first year at Tyner a couple years ago, we had 7. And this year, I think we're going to have about 6 or 7.
But last year, 20.
Last year, 20. And then my junior class coming up, we have about 16. My sophomore class coming up, we have about 16, 17. And then actually we've had about 28, 30 freshmen.
And let me say this, Coach. When that new facility gets in place, and I don't know if they'll stay on schedule, they're doing a ton of work out there. That's looking at 2 years.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think that school building grows.
I think it does too. I think they talked about possibly holding 13, 14.
I think
kids.
that building grows, and people once all that's put in place, it's kind of hard to imagine it, kind of hard to see it right now. Somebody from afar looks at it and says, "Well, that's a distraction. I don't be."
Yeah.
But when it's there,
when it's there, I'm going to be excited because everybody's about what's new. Keeping up with the Joneses. They've said we're going to have a field house. We're going to have a turf field. So there's a lot of things that I think if they're done and they do it like they say they're going to do it, it's going to benefit us a lot. And I think people are going to look over and see what's going on over there at Tyner. They got some nice facilities over there, brand new, and so I think that'll be something that I've told people once, maybe right away it won't be, but I wouldn't be surprised if we bump up to a 4A or something like that.
It'll definitely attract people to come over there because, like you said, brand new, shiny. Hey, better than what we're playing at right now.
Yep.
And
it's a good program.
And I was talking to Coach Babataka out there at Grace, and we were talking about how tough it's been on them since they lost all their facilities.
Yeah.
But I told him, I said, now listen, be patient, because once you get all that stuff back together, and it's coming, I said, there'll be a line out here wanting to be in that building.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I said, because your facilities weren't the best before that storm knocked it out. I said, now you're going to have state-of-the-art stuff.
Yep.
I said, I know the Silverdales of the world picked up your kids,
Yep.
and rightfully so in that situation. But I said, you may have to start all over. You may have to wait for those elementary kids.
It's all right. It comes full circle.
It
Just got to be
grow up,
patient.
but-
Just got to be patient.
And I think part of that is the reason why we've had such a big freshman class, and I think they see that there's progress, and they see.
Well, that freshman class can see that building.
Yeah. So,
Well, success breeds success.
and that's the other part. I think
Yeah.
winning a state championship speaks volumes, and why kids are out there. But the senior class, they're small. Every one of them, though, I think is going to be a contributor.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Sharkeem Wells, who played and started linebacker all 15 games last year. He's going to play linebacker and play running back. He's going to be that 220-pound kid I was telling you about that we're going to try to give him 10, 15 touches a game, and he's going to try to be
Big
physical.
Brandon Jacobs type.
Sound like he's important on both sides of the ball.
He is.
Lindale White.
And then we've got Bishop Smith, who is a basketball player. He can run. He's about 6'1", very very fast kid. Isaiah Sawyer, same thing. He's about 6'1". He won a gold. He won first place in state on one of the relay teams.
Nice.
For Tyner, so he can run. We've got Robert Wilson, who's another basketball kid that came out last year. He's about 6'5", 240. So he's going to play DN, D tackle, and play a little tight end tackle for us. And so he's a kid that we're hoping, takes a big leap this year. Coming off a leg injury from basketball, so he's actually looking to get cleared this week for physical contact and be a full go. So having him back would be big. And then our quarterback, Jamari Ballard, I've had him for 3 years, and if you'd have told me the first year he'd be our starting quarterback this year.
Is he number 18?
He is.
I met that young man the other night. I said, who's the quarterback? He raised his hand. I said, what number was he? He said, I was 18 last year. Coach may give me 1, but I got to earn it. I said, well, of course you got to earn it. What do you think?
I gave it to him today. So.
Oh, he's already in.
Yeah.
He did that earning.
So he's going to be big for us. And I've told him, big shoes to fill Josh Jackson's shoes. but he doesn't have to be Josh Jackson. He can throw the ball well, but really where he's going to beat teams is with his legs and with his feet. We run a lot of that counter read, zone read stuff to where you read the end and the quarterback can pull it. I think you look at Pat White in West Virginia, they're the ones that made him the most popular back in the day. I think it was like maybe 05, somewhere around there. He probably reads the zone read, counter read stuff better than anyone I've seen. And so he's really taken ownership in what his game is, and he's not really tried to size himself up against the shoes that he has to fill. So if he can be what I think he's going to be, it's all going to run through him, and so I think we'll have a lot of success. He's also got to learn not to take hits, and so that's something else he's got to be able to do is learn to maneuver himself, slide, and make sure.
When Megs came to play y'all last year, I stood outside, and as I've had many conversations with Jason Fitzgerald, good football coach, really, really
very good. He's
just
one guy.
Really
I respect more.
But he said, listen. He says, I don't know exactly if there's anybody in the West that can play with Tyner. He said, there ain't nobody needs to play with. He said, they should win a state championship unless somebody surprises me out west. Now, he kept running to somebody out west in his days that were so much similar to him, maybe with one more dude than he had, type game. But you knew last year you were going to come back and be good. I think everybody you talk about losses. I think that 20-0 loss, not that it was a good loss. Y'all came into that game, I believe, undefeated, 6-0. They came in, I think, the same way. You didn't play well.
No.
Your kids didn't respond to adversity very well. But what you did the next week showed me a lot about that. So I think those 2 weeks and those losses right there were big for last year's state championship team.
Yep.
What is this team? What is this team with a bunch of youngsters on it, a bunch of kids that hadn't played, but they've watched some people play from the sidelines, and now it's their turn. What do they bring?
Well, I think one thing we've looked at as coaches, and whether it matters or not, or it's just us trying to be overly positive. You look back at what we did last year. Really, our starters only played 4 quarters in 4 games. We had a lot of kids play in the third and fourth quarter. Now you may be up 42-0. You may be up, but they got out there and they got to be experienced those Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will pay dividends when we get ready. I know the lights are going to be a little brighter when it's a 0-0 ball game or when you're down 15-0 in the first quarter. But like I said, those first 3 games we go Red Bank, Bradley Central, and Min County. And so
that's your opening schedule.
That's the opening schedule. Thanks, Coach Chandler. But those games are going to be tough. But those teams play the same kind of brand of football we want to play. They want to be physical. They want to hit you in the mouth. And so I think we'll be able to see a lot of what we're going to look like from week 1 to week 4. I think we'll see a lot of growth. It may not result in the same in the win-loss column. We could walk out of there 0-3. But if we see results where we look like we're getting better and we're ready to look like we're heading in the right direction September, October, to me, that's what I want to see. At the end of the day, I want to win ball games, absolutely. But if we go out there and we're physical and we match physicality and we're a few plays away from winning ball games, that'll come. And I think, like you said, looking back at that Marion County game, and really the game that I think fueled our guys was Trousdale County. When we went up there, we really probably should have beaten Trousdale County. When we were the 3 seed, they were the 2 seed. We really should have probably beaten them. But I think it was that game, Marion County. That's what fueled us in the weight room. That's what fueled us in the off season. Fueled us in the spring. And so I think we can look back at maybe some of that Red Bank, the Bradley County, or Bradley Central, and then look at McMinn County.
Well, let me say this. Coach T told me this a long time ago. This was probably 20 years after he won a state championship. He says, I'm still having the schedule as if we won it last year.
Yeah, well, and that was part of the problem, too, because we called around. We want to play in town. I don't want to have to travel, so we called. I'm not going to name schools out, but we called a bunch of schools. and they did not want to play us. And I get that. But again, we lost 18, 20 kids, so it's not like you're playing the same kids.
He said the same. He said that state championship was 20 years ago, and I'm still scheduling as if we won it last year.
Yeah, and I think part of
have that to deal with.
Part of the struggle at Tyner too is we don't bring the same crowd that some schools bring. Now we pack out a home game.
Hey, let's say that a minute. What about that state championship turnout?
That's a little different.
That was
awesome.
Tremendous, wasn't it?
And I think that was a big challenge from a lot of different coaches in the area. Like even Scoop over at Mainor was encouraging, hey, we need to go and support Tyner. And so I think that is something that I think the Tyner community turned out, the city turned out. That's what made it. It was special because you win a state championship. But when you get to win a state championship, I went there Thursday night and Baylor played, and Baylor filled it out. But I'm gonna brag.
Y'all were bigger.
Tyner was bigger.
There was a bigger crowd,
and so it was just an awesome, fun experience. That you have those moments in your life. You're like, man, crap! I wish I could go back and relive it. Even if I had to watch it from afar, I would. But it was awesome for that community to come out and support us. And like I said, we traveled.
There was a lot of former alumni up in those stands.
Yeah.
As I turned around and saw people from different decades that were sitting up there.
So we have a strong community, and I think there's a stigma that we don't travel. And there's times where we don't, but at the end of the day, if we're playing and we're winning ball games, people are going to come watch us play. And I think that was a big part of it too. There's been a long time since the city of Chattanooga had seen a public school win a state championship in football.
Absolutely.
Tyner was the last one.
Well,
Red Bank, if you don't count Red Bank.
Signal. And Baylor had never won in that format.
Yeah.
So that was their first. It was 3 days.
It was a good day, a good
Yeah.
weekend for
was.
Chattanooga.
It sure was, and gratefully, because we had our fingers crossed, it's going to be back for a few more years here.
Yep.
I think the perfect place, if it was to be had properly, you could say Nashville because it's middle of the state. Okay, you could say that, but but as far as us and debating with Cookeville, there's not much of a debate there. What are we talking about?
There's not. And you look at it, I've been to Tennessee Tech, but I've never been there during state weekend. I got a good buddy named Wes Caldwell, just became the head coach at Dalton for baseball. He's been there a couple times with Greenback.
You call him a friend.
I do call Wes a friend. Been there a couple times at Greenback, and he talked about how the weather was awful.
Much different weather pattern.
The last 2 weekends, the last 2 years. I mean, you're looking at 60, 65, 70
I think
degrees.
the year the first one was in the 70s.
Oh yeah. Like
It was just
74,
it was
75.
tremendous. But different weather pattern up there. Facilities don't compare, none whatsoever. So
I'll be interested to see once the Titans get their new stadium done if there's a push.
If there's a push there,
there.
yeah,
That would be because the Cowboys, like in Texas, they don't even use the actual AT&T Stadium. They use that other,
the new one,
the practice facility or whatever.
And Georgia's now
that one has 6 full-size high school fields complete with. Jerry Jones knew what he was doing when he built that.
He's a smart man.
Well, but you got to remember, man, when they were doing the high school championship, it was a big for them. Even though it was all digital, the amount of programming and the hours and stuff that it took when they had to do, if they did a weekend where it was Friday night high school, Saturday night college, and Sunday the pros, that meant all the pageantry within the stadium had to change all 3 nights. And I mean, you think about it, you're talking about some serious hours plus plus finding people on those high school nights when you can't have Bud Light and Budweiser and all out there.
Yeah.
Who around Texas can afford to go, oh, yeah, give me the electronic banners in Texas Stadium. I mean, so he knew what he was doing.
Well, if you didn't know, Georgia's going back, and they have signed a deal. They're going to play the finals at Mercedes-Benz Stadium now.
Oh, that's cool.
They had been at Georgia State the last few years because it was costing $650,000. They wanted $650,000.
After playing in the Dome for several years, they built this, then the Falcons and that organization had a number out there that just was not.
Well, I think
but it is going to be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They can't do it on the weekend, but They've apparently.
Well, I think you
come down
got. I
enough
think
where
you
you
got to
got-
play it on turf because when you look in December when you play, weather's going to suck.
Well, the
more
Georgia
times
State
than not.
they played in torrential rains on Friday night.
And I remember watching them on TV, and I'm like, man, that field looks awful. Like, how can you tell really who the best team is when you're slipping and sliding everywhere, and it just
I hope. I hate to see it leave Finley, but if it had to leave Finley, I mean, and yes, we know Titans are putting together something that's going to be magnificent. That would be sweet if they would let that happen.
But at the same time, I remember when Ridgeland played for the championship of the Dome. 70,000 people in the Dome, but there were only 10,000 at the game, which is great.
But it looked empty.
yeah.
And that's my only concern is I would like to see. That's why I like to see it in Chattanooga because they can get 10,000 and it look like 10,000 crowd. When you got 10,000 and a 70,000.
I would say of course you got days you can pay for. I think you can pay for one day and stay in there the whole time if I'm not mistaken. Baylor had a good turnout.
Well, if you hide somewhere, they don't find you.
I don't remember the rules, but Tyner, that side would hold probably. Scott, that side holds about 9,000 or 10,000 people at least.
The home side,
and they were practically filled. Plus the other side, so there was 15,000 plus in that ball game that night.
Yeah.
But the argument against what you were talking about, Scott, is always going to be the same thing. I mean, if you're a high school kid, which is it more fun to tell your buddies about?
Yeah.
I got to play at Jolly Fat Sweet Hawkins State, or I got to play at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah,
That's
it's the experience for the kids.
Of course,
Florida it bounces back like they did it in COVID. They did it in Tallahassee. Florida State hosted it, but lately they've been doing it in Camping World Stadium in Orlando.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like it's not a massive stadium,
but it's big.
But it's
centrally
big.
located,
and it's centrally located.
Yeah.
The weather's not going to be bad there most of the time because it's inland, so it's not near as bad as far as the afternoon rain and all.
We're wrapping up, but I want you to tell us about your family. You've moved up here. Tell us about your sweet wife and your kids' names and the people that support Coach Mainor.
Okay, so so my wife and I went to high school together. We
Class of how many?
Not many.
60?
No, it was a little more than that. About 85.
85. That's if everybody showed up.
Yep. Yeah, that's if there's a lot of times. A lot of people didn't. They were too busy hunting in the woods or something like that.
With 30 minutes down from the point of the prettiest beaches in the world, and you got them out there hunting in the woods.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, it was funny. We had to have camouflage day as one of our homecoming days, and everybody's like, "Why we have that?" Because everybody wears it to school every day.
We have it. So.
Yeah, I'm sure other folks probably the same way.
We have it.
Yeah.
That's your wife's name?
Taylor.
Taylor.
And so we actually we got divorced, and then we recently got remarried again.
Okay, congratulations.
So it was kind of a full circle, God thing, and so we have 3 kids. Morgan's my oldest. She's 9, about to be 10 in August. She's a softball, basketball player. Loves it. And then I've got Cannon. He's 7, about to turn 8 in August.
Cannon,
yeah. And I'm glad. At first, when we named him Cannon, I was going to be real concerned if he didn't have a cannon for an arm. But thankfully,
he does.
Thankfully, he's got that box checked.
Okay.
So he likes to play baseball, basketball. I'm trying to push football, but he's adamant he's not going to play football. But he's got some time to make that decision. And then his nickname, we call him Cannonball. And then I've got my youngest. He is 4, and his name is Riggins. And so, kind of like John Riggins, or like if you're a Friday Night Lights fan.
It sounds like you had a lot of say in these names.
I did not.
You're telling me your lovely bride Taylor came up with these sports
names.
She did.
He's a Cowboys fan. How many Cowboys fans going to name their son
John
Riggins?
Yeah. Well, actually, her family lives in Idaho, and they live in a small town called Pollock, but 5 minutes down the road is Riggins, Idaho.
Oh, no.
So that's, and then there's Tim Riggins, which is on Friday Night Lights. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. He used to come on NBC. It's more of a drama than it's a football show. Yeah. But he was the main character in that, and we like the name Riggins.
Okay.
So then that's us. We live in Ooltewah.
Your parents down in beautiful Destin, Florida.
They live north of Destin. They still live in the little bitty house that I grew up in. It was like a 1920s farmhouse.
You talking about places that have grown now. Over the last 30+ years, Destin has.
It has.
Oh, it's become a destination
like it was
now.
35 years ago.
Destin used to be that. It used to be that little secret place down there that not everybody knew about. Now everybody knows about it.
Well, and I'll be honest, man. I can remember when all that stuff was being built. The commons. I remember when they first started and developed it. My dad's an engineer. He owns an engineering surveying company. So, a lot of that Alice Beach seaside. When I was 14 years old, I spent a lot of times holding the level rod.
While he's out there surveying it,
Property on the seaside's not.
But that's the way half of Florida is, though, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go. You can almost throw a dart anywhere in the state of Florida and go back 40 years, and if it ain't Daytona, Orlando, or Miami, maybe Tampa. Everything else was just little. I mean, Panama City, when we were in high school a long time ago, Panama City had maybe 3 or 4 hotels and a bunch of. I mean, they had a few miniature golf courses and stuff like that, but it wasn't
Miracle
nothing.
Strip and Shipwreck Island.
It wasn't nothing like what it is now.
Yeah.
Now it's like going to Gatlinburg.
Where do you find your seafood up here? Because I know you're craving it. I love seafood. I
love seafood too, but if I had to go to one place and it was going to have seafood, I'd probably go to the Boathouse.
Yeah, they do have
Boathouse is pretty good. It's something that I try to go to at least once a month, maybe once every.
I like those places like Pier 88 and the Juicy Crab and the places like that. Those are good places, man.
I haven't either.
You better be ready because you're gonna have grease all the way up to your eyeballs with all that stuff they put them in.
Scott, you may know about it. That's gotten into
barbecue.
Well, but there's
Ray's Southern Cuisine. Yeah, they started doing
the best seafood place in the tri-state area. I think they finally closed down. There was a little. You had to drive all the way to Ellijay. And there was a little roadside seafood shop that had a seafood restaurant attached. Yeah. And it was literally, they got it that morning, and as they were putting some out on the shelf, they were taking the rest and putting it in the back to prepare.
Go for a fish stick.
Let me tell you something, it's worth every bit of it. That stuff tasted like it just came out of the water. Yeah. Like they just dusted it off and threw it in the pot.
Apart from Tyner on Friday night.
We got to bring out the
fish sandwich, man.
Yeah, we can tell you where to get another good one.
Yeah, I remember when we.
Howard does a good job on fish sandwich.
Yeah, Howard does a real good job.
We played York Institute in the semifinals, and I don't remember what the score was at halftime. It was like 38-0 or something like that. And I just remember Miss Sabrina came and brought us fish sandwiches, and I'm walking out of the locker room like, I have no care in the world eating a fish sandwich, getting ready to start the third quarter. And but
Sabrina was 2 years ahead of me. She was a senior when I was a sophomore.
Okay.
Yeah,
they used to bring them to when we would come over back in the day when Coach Stu was still over there. We'd go over there and.
Stu, he's
Ephraim Stewart. He's at McCallie.
Now. Yeah, big part of Tyner.
Yeah.
You'd go over there for a game though, and Stu'd meet you. Just coming on the sidelines. Hey man, you a fish sandwich? Yeah, I'll take one. Okay. Hey, come here. Somebody come down.
My first game, Miss Sabrina needed help putting a tent up, and because I helped her put up a tent, she had a fish sandwich for me. So I was sitting around waiting for her to have to put a tent.
They brought the whole setup one night because we named it the concession stand item of the year. Remember that?
Yep.
They set up in the parking lot
at the old Stump on Sports studio.
On Stump on Sports days before you got here, we gave away.
We did television back then. It was old school.
We gave away superlatives and we would name Band of the Year, Concession of the Year, Team of the Year, Players of the Year, Coach of the Year. But Tyner had gotten the Concession award a few times because we knew if we said good things, they'd bring
you more fish sandwiches. Hey,
we had back in those days, man. We had a Central quarterback back in those days, kid named Joe Despo. His dad was Cajun from deep in the heart of Louisiana, and he brought us gumbo one night, fresh made Cajun gumbo. I I mean, there's been some Notre Dame at one time used to make brats. They had some dads that would smoke them out in the parking lot. There was
they had to be off campus.
What Ringgold had, the deep fried Oreos at one time. I mean, they had them before anybody had them. They had deep fried Twinkies.
We're all going to be sentimental about what I'm fixing to bring up here in the late Miss Dinger. Who ran Lookout Valley's concession
No better concession stand in town.
Unbelievable the effort that woman would put into a concession. We talked about pinto beans and cornbread.
Yeah, during baseball season, the moms would make dinner and bring.
They had a menu.
It'd be a potluck
different
We went over there.
Meeting 3 at
Sarah Woods. You may know Sarah Woods.
Oh, I know
Sarah.
Hey, actually, I have a cake or a pie dish in my car. Sarah Woods made me a dreamsicle cheesecake cake.
Ooh.
And I have yet to give her dish back. Hey,
Sarah's boys went to school with my child.
Okay.
And played. We coached some of them and saw them grow up being ball players. And Stephen, Sarah, I've known for.
Well, let me go ahead and tell you, when I started Ooltewah, I was about 210 pounds, and everybody said, "Well, you're working down there by Cedar, you're gonna gain 15, 20 pounds," and that's exactly what happened. I gained 15,
she's a
20
good cook.
pounds.
And Ooltewah's concessions were benefited back in the days from people like Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for tonight. Coach, appreciate you taking the time to come on with us. Hope this isn't your first appearance on Stump On. Lord, I went old school. I said Stump On. Well, y'all started talking about it. Hope this isn't your first appearance with us or last appearance with us on Scenic City Sports. Won't you feel like you can come back anytime? Always welcome.
People how you get here.
You just can't tell people where we're at and how you got here. So that's the best secret in sports media.
Yeah.
But folks, we appreciate everybody tuning in with us this afternoon. This will go live, or matter of fact, it's going live on Facebook as we speak. You know where all the good places are to find it. It can be found Spotify, Apple, Google, pretty much any podcast you can think of, hosting organization, it is on there. We've got them on all. So look them up. Make sure you get those numbers high for us. We'll catch you guys again next week. Thanks to all the All-Star sponsors that make it possible. We will see you guys all later.